That's her desk.
I want to make
Can you sit there? We're going to sit here.
Okay, with the
I know
boss,
I would love to sit there.
because this was one of the complaints at the town hall, you can change that to,
Say that.
that way they can't say we don't do it.
I don't know where she is. She must be coming.
Good morning. I have 9:30, so we'll call the meeting to order. Present is Secretary Marie Perkins, Vice President Bill Herman, myself, Dan Sullivan, Treasurer Deborah Isaacs, and Director John Holt, along with our Executive Director Richard Lawrence and Executive Secretary Christina Rodriguez. This constitutes a quorum, and so the meeting is officially called to order. If we now could stand and have a moment of silence, please. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you.
You're not going to make them all happy, Christine.
Okay, before we start, I am going to mention that I have had multiple requests to announce that your cell phones either have the ringer turned off or that they are turned off, please. And that's come from a variety of sources. The agenda, which of course is a proposed agenda, and when we work it and accept it, that by consent accepts and approves the agenda. But today I have several additions and changes that I wish to make unless we have objections to them. At the very top line, it refers to a special meeting. That should be changed to regular meeting. Under the committee reports, we want to add the election committee. And under the new business, discussion about Halloween, whether that's an open gate or not. And then under the executive session agenda, we have two items that need to be added. One is the negotiation involving the sale of a property owned by the fort, one that was taken back. And we have some negotiation decisions to make there. And the second is a permit request that has become a little bit complicated and has been referred to the board by the architectural committee to deal with. So unless there's objections, I would like to have those items added to our agenda. Hearing no objections, I will take it that that is all right. Are there any items in the consent agenda that any director would like to have removed? Are there any corrections or additions anyone have for the minutes that are within that agenda?
Oh, I do. There's a ton of mistakes in those minutes.
I'm sorry, Maria, I did.
There are a lot of mistakes in these minutes. A lot of them. I didn't get these sent to me prior to them being given to us, so I don't know how you want to deal with that, but I've got them all scratched over here.
Possibly we can approve them with the stipulation that the mistakes or errors have to be corrected by you and Christina working together. Is that acceptable?
Okay.
If you have an alternative, I'm open.
Well, I think in general we need to have a better way of doing this. I mean, she sent them to me in the past before ahead of time. So I think between us, we'll figure out a better way of making sure these are accurate. I'm not the most excited about approving something with stipulations because it leaves a lot of room for error. So I don't know. I'll go with whatever the consensus says, but I'm not a fan of approving things with contingencies to them, either yes or no.
Are they typo errors or they?
Well, no, some of them are, like for example, on the back page. The facility rental and use agreement was approved, but there was a contingency to that approval, and that's not in here. And there was another one where that was the same thing. There was a contingency, and that's not in here as well. And then there are several areas where the individual who made the report is either named Mr. or renamed to Bill, and it was really Joe Lackness that did a lot of these reports. And then there were just some misquotes from, for sure, the airport committee report, but I don't know. I need to go back and watch the video to compare the other ones, because if that one was wrong, I don't know what else is inaccurate. So, and considering we only had the packets a day and a half prior to the meeting, and I'm sick, I didn't have that on my priority list to watch the video again.
So are you now suggesting we remove that from the consent agenda?
Sure, remove it. It's fine.
All right, the minutes will be removed from the consent agenda, and I guess what we'll have to do is table them, the approval of the minutes, until next month's meeting. Okay? Everyone in favor of doing that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Everyone opposed? Okay, we have one, no, you voted for? Okay, we had 2 for, 1 against, so the minutes will be tabled for approval till next month's meeting. With that, we'll have the secretary's report, please.
Well, I'm going to try to be brief, but I requested a formal tour of the admin office and was denied the request due to preparing year-end reports, assisting with cumbersome open records requests, preparing packets, and preparing for the board meeting. We did not receive complete packets for this board meeting, so I'm confused what was being done if we didn't get complete packets. I requested delinquency lists, none were provided. I requested a list of the salaries and job titles, that was also not provided. And the board, I need some clarification on the open records request, because the board has not formally tasked the EO to answer the open records request. The president had said he was doing that. So I'd like to know if the board is the one who's supposed to task the executive officer to do that. When was that task given? Because I didn't have anything to do with that. And the other thing is that there are some severe communication issues with our admin and our membership / the board. I haven't seen any notice when we've got limited staff in the office, or when or I guess even the executive officer, when he's out of the office. And I think all of us need to be aware of that, because when we have members that are telling us that they aren't getting the support that they need, or they're requesting meetings and they're being told that there's no time for meetings, I don't know if we don't have our key staff up there at the office. So I'd like to request that formally here, that we be notified as a whole when there's limited staff on hand and when the executive officer is going to be out of the office. And then the other thing that was more of a complaint given to me, and I do agree with it, is that excuse me, I'd appreciate the lack of extra comments out there, please. That there's no communication, apparent communication, between the POCs of who's working events and other organizations. I received a lot of complaints about the Oktoberfest stuff, and I understand that there was an email sent out about planning issues and whatnot. But on our end of it, you know, we talk a lot about picking up a phone and calling people, and I really feel like if there would have been a phone call made to both parties, that probably would have been averted. And that is my answer as well to the couple of people who are in here that did make those complaints. But that's my report. Thank you.
I didn't quite understand everything. I'm sorry, Maria, I really am, but I just have a difficult time understanding you. I don't know why, but I do. But I did hear some referral to Oktoberfest and what we should have done to avert it, but I would also mention that you stated that you had invited Laughlin Air Force Base to come for Oktoberfest. Isn't that correct?
While that is a moot point, yes, that is correct.
I saw that in an email, and yet you missed it too because you were certainly aware of the ghostly tours, as it's something we discussed and voted on at the last board meeting. So, along with the rest of us, you joined in on missing that conflict there and said nothing.
I saw no conflict, and I'm granted, assuming is not a good thing to do, but I assume that communication is being made between the POCs planning events and our organizations that are trying to have these events. So where I'm saying is that in the future, we do need to have better communication, whether that's picking up a phone, making a phone call, and saying, hey, community council, is our Oktoberfest event going to hinder your ability to do what you're trying to do? And let both of the parties say yes or no. I don't know who's in charge of Oktoberfest. I did ask that question, and I did not get an answer to that. But my point is not that I sent the flyer out to Laughlin. The point is that for us as an organization here, we look like we don't have our own control over our own events because we can't deconflict by making very simple phone calls. That was my point with that.
Well, the point is, all of us up here were or should have been aware of the conflict, and any one of us could have made the phone call or brought it to the attention of the office. And I think we all failed on that together. As far as the open document request, I think you referenced that, if I caught that correctly. And that request came in. We have two of them. The first one we're just finishing up. Came in and was addressed to the board president and the board secretary, upon which I contacted you to hopefully be able to arrange work together to satisfy that request. There's many items. I think there were 13 different items, and some of the items involving multiple documents or pages of information. And your response to me was you didn't have time to deal with it, we should task it to the staff. And so with that, I've gone to work and spent many hours working alone and with the staff to come up and satisfy that. And a letter to that requester will be going out probably tomorrow, advising her that it's available for her inspection. And beyond that, I don't know if anyone else has responses to any of your report there or not.
Well, with regard to your message to me that you and I need to answer that letter, what my response was that I don't have access to that stuff, and that us as a board, we should be tasking our administration, who does have access to that and who's paid to do that and manage all of that stuff. And then I did say, yes, my schedule does not permit for me to go up there and do that. But again,
everyone has access to that stuff.
That is correct, and your response to me, Maria, in an email was, I do not have time to deal with it.
That's not exactly what my email said, and I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about that because you can go back and look at it. But the point I'm making is that we decided as a board that if we were going to task the administration, that we were doing it as a full board, and I requested that it be done in our board meeting, and I was told no. And now that we've got staff apparently working on these, and I'd like to know at what point we as a board actually act as a board versus one person tasking the staff to do stuff when we agreed that that's not what we were doing.
I have no idea what you said, but moving on. Deborah, Treasurer's report, please.
Our bank transfers for the month of September: Texas Community credit card to Texas Community checking, $99,154.87 for operating expenses. Transfer from Bank and Trust General to Bank and Trust Payroll in the amount of $60,010.73 to fund payroll. Bank and Trust General to Texas Community checking to fund operations, $10,000 for operating expense. Bank and Trust General to Los Morris Corporation, $191.18 for beer, liquor. Restricted fund to Bank and Trust checking for $573 to reimburse for motel repairs, for a total of the month of September, $169,929.78. The bank accounts that we have, and I've done a little thing here, and I may ask you a question, Mr. Smalley. We originally had $405,458.83 in the restricted fund, but doesn't $35,127.35 come out of that fund for the preservation fund, leaving a total of $366,814.48 in the actual restricted itself?
Well, actually, no. The restricted fund is the restricted fund. That's $405,000.
Mm-hmm.
The historical preservation account is a sub-account of the restricted fund. So since we have to report on the funds itself, the fund itself, the restricted fund in total is $405,000. And as a footnote, a part of the restricted fund is segregated for historical buildings purposes, and that's $35,000. It's actually gone up to $37,000 as of today.
Well, but this is strictly September we're talking about, so. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure, because to me, the $35,000 should not be able to be spent in the actual, what we call our restricted fund, so I was just breaking it up.
The footnote here
Okay.
refers to that portion of the
Just
fund.
was clearing my own head on it.
I will segregate the two items. I'll put them in two separate lines next time.
Okay, thank you. The Texas Community credit card account, $3,826.83. The Texas Community checking account, $3,098.63. The Texas Community money market account, $2,665.98. Bank and Trust General, $96,891.53. Bank and Trust Payroll, $971. Los Morris Corporation shows a negative 1643.04. There was also a footnote. A footnote on that one that showed that it really does have a positive bank account as of 9/30/18, the negative due to recorded deposits and payments that had not been cleared at the bank. The preservation, $35,127.35. And another question, did any money go into that preservation for September? I didn't get the bank statement for the
Yeah.
preservation
Yes.
for September.
there's an additional 2,100. It's actually $2,192.18 that's added to the portion of the total of the restricted fund doesn't change, but the allocation of money from the restricted fund into the sub-account for historical buildings preservation is increased by $2,192.18. So the total amount of money segregated for historical buildings is $37,319.53.
Okay, thank you so much. The health fund is $24,185.20 for a total of $531,937.96 plus the $2,000 he just told us about. That's it.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the treasurer? Hearing none, I will thank you, Deborah, for that report. We now will move to the executive officer's report. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things here. Since the last meeting, our computer server has been installed, and the migration of the data from the old to the new was very successful. So we're up and running. The motel doors and the electronic locks are in, and as soon as possible, we're going to begin installing those doors at the motel. Next week, I hope to be able to show you a model room. It's coming along nicely now, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. By next meeting, I hope to have all of the traffic control signs installed as well. We're going to take advantage of the rain-soaked ground and hopefully dig post holes a little easier. Grass is growing faster than our scheduled mowing is allowing, so we just simply have to ask you all to please be patient, and the grass will get cut as we're able. The roads to the brush pit and to the landfill are flooded. It's creating quite a problem for us. We're thinking of picking up the brush anyway and stockpiling it somewhere so that we can move it again a second time. That's double work, but we may have to do it that way. The landfill, of course, is still flooded, and we're not able to cover, we're not able to cover the refuse except by tarps because we just can't get to the dirt to be able to cover it with dirt. And this is all acceptable with TCEQ, and we're in communication with TCEQ about this. We're looking at options. One of the options is to have the garbage, the refuse, hauled off in containers, but that would probably cost us in the neighborhood of $700 a week, so we want to try to avoid that if we can. TV service. The DirecTV is now installed at the motel, and that service is up and running. However, we have discontinued the previous TV service provider, the one that was costing us $875 a month for 12 channels. So when we did that, of course, that eliminated TV service to the RV park. So there is no TV service there right now. However, the RVers can subscribe to the internet service that is out there. And I would like them to know that we are looking at some options to provide a TV service, at least on a limited basis. And hopefully I'll be able to have a report for you in the very near future in that regard. So that's about all I have to report today.
Are there any questions for our executive officer?
I have a couple. Have you or your staff already made the adjustments to the facility use agreement that we had discussed at the previous meeting?
We are in the process of making those changes. We do have some agreements at the front desk. They're not fully complete. We're learning things as we go along.
Okay. And
one example of that is the need for insurance where there is alcohol served and we're not the ones serving it. That insurance policy has gone from $175 to $350, which means that along with the other fees that are charged for those venues, it could easily put us out of business. So I'm trying to discover or search out alternative to that. And of course, that'll make changes to the agreement as well.
okay.
Is there,
Oh, go ahead.
On that same question, is there any way that the fort could buy an umbrella policy that would be cheaper and then charge each individual part of that policy when it
I can
happens?
ask that question of our risk manager. When I was talking to him about this, he said, you know, this is the first time that you have stumped me. I don't know what to tell you, and I will research it and get back to you. So as soon as I know something, you'll know
I
something.
mean, it may be bigger at first, but if they would recoup some of it, it could be cheaper in the long run to do it that way.
I hear you. I can ask.
And with reference to the computer server, I'm glad it's installed. Were there additional costs that were associated with an installation?
I don't know that there were additional costs. I'll go back and look.
Okay. And then I have one more question. This wasn't in your report, but I read that we allow the company to trap deer on the fort, and when we've had previous financial reports, we haven't had a line item that says that that's an income. Are we getting any income from the open-ended agreement for the trapping?
There has not been any trapping per se in quite some time. When the deer have plenty of greenery to eat, they don't walk into the traps.
Gotcha.
I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes being removed from that agenda.
You want a motion?
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the minutes. It's been seconded. Any further discussion on it? Hearing none, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. We now go to the committee reports. We'll start with the airport committee.
There's no report.
Was that no report?
Correct, no report.
Thank you. Then the Preservation Committee.
Bill Peak asked me to just pass this on. With regard to Dickman Hall, they have submitted ads to 3 newspapers. This is for the awning that you guys gave them permission to do bids for. We have submitted ads to 3 newspapers, Uvalde, Del Rio, and Kinney County, starting 9 October. The suspense for submittals is the 24th of October. So far, there have been no calls from bidders. The POC for the Preservation Committee is Bill Peak. He has coordinated with Philip in maintenance to open Dickman Hall when we have bidders and for those who want to see Dickman Hall. That's basically his report. I have a question, if I could, with regard, because I'm the treasurer, with regard to the money. The number of 2192.18, is that for September and October?
No, it's for September. It's simply.
It's a bigger number, that's why I was asking that.
Well, it's an allocation of the monies that go into the restricted fund.
For the president.
And the monies that go into the restricted fund are dependent on the collections. And we think the collections are slightly higher in September because some people choose to pay the whole year's dues. And a lot of those people will pay monthly, some people pay annual in one shot, and that means we get a little bit extra.
You'll probably
But
see,
normally around 1900.
Right, it's around 1900 usually.
and you'll probably see more in October also.
Okay, so that number of 37,319.53 is through September.
Yes, ma'am. So, I'm gonna suggest that y'all contact owning companies, not just put it in the newspaper. There's some in Del Rio, there's some in Eagle Pass that actually install and put up awnings.
Contacting them directly.
Contacting them directly, because they may
Okay.
not actually get the
Or
newspaper.
bother to read it.
That's right,
Okay,
exactly.
I can handle that.
And
Thank you.
I had two questions also.
Oh, sorry.
Just to clarify, when we put advertisements in the paper, is that coming out of your money, your
Yes,
your
yeah,
funds
yeah,
money?
preservation, yep.
Okay. And then my second question was along the lines with what Mr. Hope suggested. Do you know if they put anything online, like on
I don't
Facebook
believe
or
so.
anything
Not that
like
I'm
that?
aware of, but I'll mention that as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Architectural Committee?
Morning.
Good morning.
We had 4 meetings in September. We approved 10 permits for painting, fencing, landscaping, and 2 new houses. Letters were sent to a resident on Warbonnet regarding cleaning up. And another letter that had been sent about a month or so ago about a trailer parked on the street. That's finally been removed. And that was in Unit 7. And just a couple reminders for members. You need permits for outside repairs, construction, painting, landscaping. Permits for maintenance and repainting same color are no charge. And then same deal that you mentioned about cutting. Grass needs to be cut, weeds need to be cut, brush. And we're getting ready to start sending out violation letters.
Thank you, Joe. Recycling?
Interesting use of the alphabet here. Good morning. As of this week, we cannot drive through the recycle center. The back door, again, is a problem, so it can't be lifted high enough for a vehicle to go through. So what I'm planning is to avoid huge amounts of chaos with cars coming in and trying to back out. What I'm going to do is just have the front door high enough so people can walk in with their stuff. So it's until that door is professionally fixed, we can't do anything.
Update.
Yeah.
Philip has talked to one door person not available. He's contacting the second door person, the company, so we should have something pretty soon.
Hopefully, yeah. Thursday is coming up, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's gonna get done by tomorrow, but.
Yeah. So anyway, that's sort of a temporary, hopefully temporary problem. I was hoping to be able to send off cardboard, but because of the rain, cardboard has gotten wet, and so we're in the same situation as we were last month. And again, I asked people, don't put your cardboard out at the curbside when you know it's going to rain, because it doesn't do us any good at all. So, and the other note is, please flatten your cardboard when you do put it out on the curb, because the maintenance people have a hard time lifting it, putting it in, and then having to flatten it. So that's it. Any questions? No?
Guess not. Thank you, Helena.
Thank you.
Golf Committee.
I do not believe there is anybody here to give a committee report. We'll decide today if we're going to try to have that tournament this weekend. It's a 3-day tournament, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Cash is supposed to give his remarks to the golf committee. That's about it right now.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're not going to see much activity as far as income because of all the rain. Just remember, that's the reason why.
Yeah, the rain has a lot of effect all over the place here, so that's Mother Nature. The Equine Committee, please. Welcome back.
Sorry. I don't have a whole lot to say other than we have a member going off and a member coming on to the equine committee, and that will be discussed under action items. And then after that, we will have at least a full 5-person group. We have no alternate, and I think there's been another name submitted, so we might think about that. And other than that, we haven't had a meeting recently, and I hope to be having a meeting with the new group and see how we might be able to assist with the barn. That's about it. Second stall's finished.
Questions? Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
Recreation, as that committee hasn't started up yet, I don't believe. No one here from Recreation. Next is the Election Committee.
Good morning. We did have a meeting, kind of an organizational meeting, and if they're here, I want to introduce the members in no particular order. Judy Winchell, Mary Frances Partlow, I'm here, right there. Dennis Stephenson, back in the corner, and Lisa Vale. I have something for you. What we decided on, we set one date, but what we decided on is we're going to start advertising the campaign for 2 director positions early, so that people can start deciding whether or not they want to run. And we're going to advertise that in the dispatch. There are 2 positions open. That's Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Herman. A few things for people who are interested is that really there's only one requirement under Texas property law, and that is that a member must be a property owner to be on the board. The restriction is that that member may not have been convicted of a felony or moral turpitude, which are kind of both the same thing. But anyway, for you. And if for some reason someone is elected and it is found out later that they have a conviction, they are immediately removed from the board. So any of you guys out there with felonies or moral turpitude, that's the more interesting one. And I always have to look that up in the dictionary. Something that some people don't know, and I'm asked about it constantly, is that there is no limit on number of terms that can be served. In the old days, you could be on there and then you had to take a year off and then you could run again. But you can run as many times as the members want to elect you. Okay? There's also another misconception out there, and this has been changed for many years, is you do not have to be current on your assessments to run for the board or hold a director's position. That is state property code. That's not something we made up. Also, there's no requirement that the property owner actually live on the fort physically. They can live elsewhere as long as they're willing to attend meetings and abide by the code of ethics. We're going to be revising the candidate data sheets in line with no restrictions on who runs except for property owner. And Richard made a nice suggestion, is we don't need all of that description of where you worked and where you went to school and so forth, because later on people who are running will be submitting their own little bio to be included with the ballot. We're going to start putting the data sheets out at board meetings, adult center, admin office, golf course, and so forth, so that they're available for everybody who wants to run. The annual meeting is on March 30th, 2019, so all applications will be due by January 2nd, 2019, by 5 p.m. That gives us 2 weeks to put things together for the board for us to have the drawing ballot position at the January board meeting. Okay, so we want to make this as open and clear as everything, so we're going to start early this time. And that's pretty much, do you have any questions?
Any questions for Sandra?
I have a question. the form that you were saying is gonna be placed all over, could it be put on the on our Facebook page?
I'm sure.
On our,
I can
on
have,
our website?
yes, I can have
Also,
Richard's staff do
Does the
that.
board need to approve that too?
I don't think so, do you?
No, I
We'll
don't.
we'll spread it out as far as we can.
Okay. We are the election committee, we're all seeing, all powerful. Any more questions? Okay, our next meeting is next week, a week from today, the 24th. Anybody's welcome to attend if they're actually interested, but we'll be meeting somewhere here, haven't decided where, so, okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sandy, appreciate it. Sounds like you're doing a lot of good work and have things under control. We now will move to the action items at first. Oh, I am very sorry. Thank you, Bill. Community Council, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Allison Watkinson, Treasurer of Community Council. So we haven't had a meeting, but there are a number of things we would like to talk to you about. First of all, we are really very happy that there is an escrow account for the guide-on flags for the Empty Saddle area. In 2017, Community Council purchased guide-on flags for the 2017 Fort Clark Days. And the Fort Clark Springs Association Board of Directors agreed to reimburse us for the cost of $1,300.60. We were never reimbursed. So we would like to make it known that Community Council was the first contributor to the escrow fund. All right. There were no new guide-on flags this past year because we just did not have the money to replace that for the Fort Clark Days 2018. So we are really excited about the escrow fund. We know that there's a line item. We understand all of that, but we're glad that other people are stepping up for that as well. Lisa Vale has gone to the office in the past to get 10 to 15 copies of flyers made. And one of the last times that she went, she was told that there was going to be a 50-cent charge for making color copies. Black and white were 10 cents. We consider that 50 cents per copy to be excessive. I went and ordered, I have a LaserJet printer at home, so I went and ordered ink for that. The cost of the ink was $600. And then when I figured it all out, it's actually about 15 cents, including the paper. So I will be donating the cost of the copies in the future just because we think that 50 cents per color copy for membership is excessive, and I would like the board to reconsider that cost. Next, our first Ghostly Tours was this past Saturday. We made $495 for that, which was amazing because when the evening started out, we had only 30 reservations. But then as people saw that the weather was turning out to be pretty nice, they started calling in and texting in for reservations. One half of that will go to, one half of our profit will go to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes because they were doing the children's activities. And the other half of that goes into our fund for when we do scholarships for the seniors. Our next Ghostly tour is on October 27th. We will have 3 wagons for that tour. We only had 2 wagons this past tour. The board has already seen all of the emails and everything else that we sent out, but the audience hasn't. So I just want to make some comments on the Oktoberfest. When we set up for Ghostly Tours the Wednesday night before the Saturday night, checking to make sure that everything could be seen from the windows and everything, we had heard that there was going to be an Oktoberfest. So the only modification we made to our plans was we would not put a Bluetooth speaker out on the porch for the music for the dancing skeletons in the windows. Yeah, those weren't real, folks. Anyway, all of our secrets are coming out. The dancing skeletons in the windows, it was a fast tango and tango music. And we decided that with a party going on downstairs, they wouldn't be able to hear the music. And so that would be really cool, you know, and everything would be okay. So we were really distressed to hear that the Oktoberfest had been canceled.
Rescheduled.
Well, it was canceled for that night. Yeah, later on it came out that it was rescheduled. And so then on Saturday when we went to finalize everything, turn on computers, turn on the strobe and everything else, we also discovered that Dickman Hall was actually closed, which distressed us even further. Part of the reason why it distresses us is now that this has been two kind of things in recent history where it appears that community council is at the center of controversy. And so that's distressing to us. We are hoping that Dickman Hall will not be closed on October 27th, which is our next night. All we are using is the second floor, and that is strictly for the light effects to go outside the window. And it doesn't affect anybody. Nobody is up there during that time, so we're not violating any ABC rules or anything like that, at least to our knowledge. So we're just hoping that that doesn't happen. And in the future, this has not been an issue in the past because Dickman Hall was not open last year during Ghostly Tours. It didn't open until a little bit later. So this is the first time this has ever kind of happened that we would have something going on, you know, those visuals going on from the second floor when the hall was actually open. At least I don't think Dickman Hall was open last year. Did it open last year or the year before? Year before? Oh, okay. All right, well, there was no problem. Anyway, so I would just like, you know, we can deal with any situation as long as we get a heads up or a courtesy phone call, because it was not anybody from community council who had expressed a concern. And I would just like everybody to know that. I know the board already knows that. We're rehashing things that went out in the email. Okay, some upcoming events. Our movie this Saturday, Transylvania 3, 4, and 7 at the Post Theater. We're cutting down to 2 showings instead of 3 because of a lack of volunteers. We seriously need volunteers for our movies. We need 3 volunteers per movie showing. So we can either end up with 6 volunteers per Saturday, or we can end up with 3 volunteers volunteering twice on Saturday, however it works out. But we really do need the volunteers to help us out one Saturday each month for our movies. On November 10th, the movie Darkest Hour is right before Veterans Day. It's going to be the movie, again, 4 and 7. Our next community council meeting is November 10th at 10 a.m. right here in this very room. And then I would just like to make a couple comments on your agenda item that is coming up, and that is consideration of approval of Community Council's use of Fort Clark Springs Association facilities and allow open gate for fundraising events. These are now going to be taken over by Sharon, right? Sharon will be presenting these to you in the future because she is chair of the Fort Clark Days Committee, and that is actually a Fort Clark Days Committee activity coming up with fundraising events. Fort Clark Days is sponsored by 2 associations on the fort. One is Fort Clark Springs Association and the other is Community Council. Since we have a committee this year and a chair, then those things are now going to be carried forth by Sharon. I would like to remind everybody, though, that once all the bills are paid for Fort Clark Days, and those bills approach $10,000, something under $10,000, and that would include the $3,500, or approximately include the $3,500 that we keep back for startup fees each year. Then the rest of that money does go to the Preservation Committee and for their continued work here on the fort. We've had this past year, I don't think we did not donate anything because we couldn't even withhold back the $3,500. The year before, it was about $3,000 that we contributed to that committee. So because we have a full Fort Clark Days committee this year, we're hoping that our fundraising will result in more funds going to the Preservation Committee. So with Fort Clark Days having fundraising events, this will definitely help as well. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes. Transylvania 3.
Oh.
In the theater, Saturday night, 4 and 7. We need you to come because we are in the hole from our summer showings. Yes, ma'am.
The question that
Am I allowed to answer her? Am I allowed to talk to her?
You can if it can be brief. We
Okay.
I
really,
just have a quickie question,
Yeah.
and that is it possible to add Fort Clark days to the committee reports so that they have a slot to get up and say something every month about what they're doing and encourage people to come?
is there a reason that couldn't be part of the community council report?
No, I'm talking about this board meeting.
Yeah. Are you suggesting that 4 Clark Days just comes up behind us and makes a report?
No, am I?
No, I know you want a separate
Okay.
agenda
Okay,
item,
that's what I'm
but his
asking.
question's different.
I think that's what I think I get out of it, is that you will give your committee report, and you're the umbrella over for Clark Day, so she can come up and give her part
Okay.
of community council.
Okay. Does that work for you all? Okay. Would you like to come up and give a 4 Clark Days committee report? Thank you, ma'am.
We're gonna have to schedule a special meeting for community council.
They're busy.
We're doing our best. We're doing our best. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I won't take up a lot of time. I just want to go
That's
over.
fine.
I just want to go over what we've planned so far and make sure it's okay with all of you.
That's great.
We do have approval for our Thanksgiving dance. You all said that sounds like fun, go with it. But do you all have to vote on all of our fundraising events?
I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that we asked the community council to give us a list of all their fundraising events so we could do it in one sweep.
Okay.
And so far, there are only 2 items that I'm aware of, that's the 2 dances.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Yeah, I think if there's a Thanksgiving Day dinner, I'm not familiar with that, but that's something we'd have to,
No, it's a Thanksgiving
Dance.
night.
oh,
Thanksgiving
dance.
night dance.
Oh, okay,
Well,
that's,
it's the Friday after Thanksgiving, actually.
all right, that's part of the request that we have.
Yes,
Okay, no problem.
And we got permission from Kirk Partlow to have it at the RV Park Pavilion.
I understand the RV park has said it from their end it's okay,
Okay,
and now the board has to deal with the other extenuating circumstances and issues involving it.
yeah. Well, like what?
Is there gonna be liquor there? Will there be beer? Is it a bring your?
It's BYOB.
Do they have to
BYOB.
have insurance on that case like that?
I would think so.
Now, we're gonna have a discussion on that when we get to it on the agenda item.
Okay. Secondly, we have approval from the Historical Society to have our Fort Clark Days dance on the porch of the History Museum. We've got approval from the Historical Society. The reason I'm bringing this up is because if we're going to have bands, if we're going to have live music, we've got to let them know and see if they're free to come here on the dates that we've selected. So we want to get everything booked ahead of time and organized and have the go-ahead. And lastly, since Old Quarry isn't having a New Year's Eve dance this year, would we be permitted to have a New Year's Eve dance at Dickman Hall? And if so, would we have to pay for use of the facility or not? Since it's a fundraiser.
Okay, and that's the community council.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess that's something I think would be necessary to put on the agenda for next month's meeting.
Okay. Okay. And also, since New Year's Eve is on a Monday, would we have permission to have the bar open? Or would you rather people bring their own beverages?
That wouldn't be allowed.
Well, yeah. So would the
It's
bar
a
be allowed to
license.
be open?
The bar could be open, yes.
Okay.
Cash bar open.
Okay.
yes.
And I think that's all I wanted to hit upon. I just want to make sure that we've got a green light to go ahead and plan things. Whatever we plan will be brought to you naturally for your approval,
Okay.
you know.
For those items that we'll need to put on the agenda for November, can you get something to us in writing
Sure.
on those, listing them all?
Okay, no
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we now move to the action items on the agenda, but before, ahead of them, we solicit any comments, questions, concerns from the members, anyone that has any comments regarding any of those action items. Okay, please come forward.
My question was, how were the people chosen to be on the equine committee?
Excuse me, someone else is talking. Okay, yeah, if you could repeat, please.
Oh, sorry. My question was just.
Who are
Your
you?
name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kim Van Ort.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
My question was, how were the people chosen for the request to be on the equine committee?
How are the people chosen?
To be on the equine committee.
The ones that are the action item?
Okay, their names were submitted by various people connected with both the horse club and outside of it, and they were submitted to the board of directors who then voted.
Who are the various people? Because I'm on both the horse club and the equine committee. And
I don't have a record of that. I know, I believe some were submitted by, are you talking about the current ones up? Or,
the ones that are going to be discussed to be put on.
okay, those. As I understand it, one was submitted by Judy Winchell,
Okay.
a member now. Another one was
Linda O'Brien submitted the name.
Linda O'Brien
the name of
submitted
Sandy Herman,
one.
And Judy Winchell submitted the name of Marcia Moore.
Okay.
Is there any, do we know if they have experience with livestock, horses, anything like that? Do we know what their credentials are to be on the committee?
It's my understanding they have familiarity with horses and the equines.
Okay.
How extensive that is, I don't know. When we look for volunteers to serve on our committees here, we're kind of happy to see some that we have them, and we don't make them fill out an application like they're going to be engaged in a paying position job.
All right, I understand that. I just,
Okay.
I don't know them personally, so I just don't know what they know and what they don't know. I just want to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for both representing the board and the horse club.
Okay.
That's all. That's why I was asking.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No one brought this up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my God, look at those things. I don't know if I can reach it or not.
I'll get it.
Kristen Watkinson, I think she's already spoke, Kathy Warren. Parade.
Did you call them up?
Is they on the, is that an action item?
Well, the parade is not an action item. Sharon Grigorik's already taught. Jan Metcalf on calendar events, but that's not something on an action item either. None of these are action items.
Okay, those are things you're free to come up and discuss with the directors individually or collectively at the end of the meeting. And before we go into the executive session, we'll open it up to that session of the informal visiting with each of us. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn the chair over to Vice President Bill Herman to put forth each one of the action items.
Action item number 1, consider approval of Community Council's use of Fort Clark Springs Association facilities and allow open gate for fundraising events. It's kind of already been mentioned, but one is the dance at the RV park. Well, I'm just telling you what is on, okay?
Halloween?
Well, the Halloween is not part of that, I don't don't think that's part of this.
No. Do we have a synopsis here in a suggested motion?
Yeah, like I said, they wanted to have the dance, they wanted to have permission at Fort Clark Days to use the museum bandstand, if you will, patio area for a band.
Mr. Herman, there was some talk of a potential New Year's Eve party.
Yeah, right, but that's not on here, that's not the one that's on here right now.
No, that just came up 2 nights ago, but it's
Yeah.
something that's now in the works.
Well, we're gonna have to have a report from you to request those, anyway.
Okay.
And then the suggested, the only question I have is the fundraising dance at the RV park, is it Saturday or Friday? Okay, it's March Saturday. Is Friday the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, so the day is wrong, the date is right.
Sorry.
Is that correct?
Now, what date and what month are we talking about?
November.
23rd, the Friday night after Thanksgiving.
And
November 23rd, and when's the other date?
the other one is on March 1st.
It's a Friday night of Fort Clark Day.
Right, and that would be using the porch museum for the band to set up on. And also to have these both events open to the public.
I think one of the concerns is the liability issue involving an event where there is or is likely to be alcohol involved. And I know Richard has consulted with Mr. Blush, our insurance broker and risk management person. And Richard, could you give us some detailed information on what our options are with this and consequences?
Can I back up for a moment, please?
Sure.
We didn't make a motion to discuss yet.
Oh, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, what suggested motion would be to approve Community Council's use of the RV Park and Old Guardhouse Museum outdoor premises for fundraising dances to be held on November 23rd and March 1st. And there'll have to be some insurance discussion because of the having alcohol on premises for these events.
Okay,
So-
and yeah, the Fort Clark Springs will have to be named as an additional insured
Right.
for the event. I'll second your motion. So if you can give us a little more detail on the insurance liability issue, Richard, then we can have a discussion and make a decision.
All right, so, well, I'm not sure that there's much that I can add to what has already been said, except that in talking to the risk manager, he is going to look more deeply into this and talk to some underwriters about it. But there is less risk to the fort if it is BYOB, because people are actually serving themselves, and so that's a little bit of the good news. The bad news is that when you have an open gate, or even if it's not an open gate, and you have members that are coming on for the purpose of the, let's say an FRM who's coming onto the fort for the purpose of this dance and brings their own alcohol, it's when our greatest risk is when they leave the fort in an intoxicated state. And if an accident, heaven forbid, was to happen, we will be sucked into the litigation. Community council, though, will also be sucked into that litigation. And so his recommendation is that community council purchase a policy which will give some bit of cushion for the fort, some protection to the fort if its named as an also insured. At this point, he's saying $300 to $350. He's not sure about that, but
That's if we have a
no.
It has nothing to
that
do with the open gate. It
really
has to
doesn't have anything to do with the
liquor
open
being
gate,
served,
yeah.
even BYOB.
Yeah, but he's talking about people coming in across.
If you're an
the driveway.
FRM, you'll be coming onto the fort and then leaving the fort.
Yeah.
So
They come out of
it's
this
really not an
gate, and
issue.
you're obligated.
So, so I can't now at this point tell you what insurance policy or how much that's going to cost. He's researching that for us, and as soon as we can, we'll get word back. But it does appear that it should be necessary for the fort's protection to have some insurance policy in place.
What is the policy right this minute for people to come through the gate, go over here to Dickman Hall to the bar?
Dickman Hall is different because that's us serving under our license, right?
Okay.
And we would have a policy there for $175. $176 is the policy that would cover that event. But we're serving and we're controlling how much one drinks.
Okay.
So that's how that plays out. And so if someone did leave the fort and have an accident, that's the policy that would give us some protection. And so that is the difference here. Yeah.
Okay.
So my question also is, along those lines, would that mean that the alcohol would have to be served at Dickman Hall, or do you have a mobile counter, if you will,
We
that
don't
could
have a
move?
mobile counter. No, even when we're having the Fort Clark days, if we're selling beer, we have to buy a special license for that and special insurance for that as well.
Okay. I also do want to take a second to remind the audience that this part now is for the board members to be discussing items. So as much as it's tough to refrain from inputting comments, this is the part where the board discusses this.
Your first dance is when?
23rd of November.
23rd.
November 23rd, right.
You might could check on that umbrella policy and then charge each person individually. That would still give them time to make a decision. I don't know.
We'll explore the options as soon as we can.
Could the event be approved, but we don't approve the alcohol until we know what's going on with the alcohol portion of that? So we approve that they can have a dance and their fundraiser, but we don't stipulate that they can serve alcohol or have alcohol brought by themselves. Is that even an option for us to do? That's so at least they can start advertising their event. And then the alcohol portion of that.
I think the only way that you can do it is a contingency that the approval of the event with the contingency that an insurance policy be put in place. It's not a question of serving or not serving alcohol, because I guarantee you
There will be.
there will be alcohol.
So this dance is November the 3rd.
23rd.
23rd. Okay, November the 23rd. Okay. Friday night.
Would it be an option to approve it with the stipulation that they must provide FCSA adequate insurance protection from liability, whatever arrangements are necessary for them to make?
Yes, sir, and that's stated in the suggested motion.
I mean, this has, at least I feel, an obligation to protect the association, and as much as you want to accommodate all of our different groups and organizations, putting the association at a great financial risk does not seem to be something that I'm excited about doing, at least. But I would like to see the event be able to take place. And in fact, it could be possible if they have to buy the policy for $350, the board could maybe look at splitting the cost with them, something like that. I don't know how much money the community council makes or has. I know nothing about their finances. But if it's a fundraiser, that they may have to look at just one of the expenses and cost of holding the fundraiser. What say the rest of you?
I think you're right. I think we just have to, we can approve it as is with the insurance having to be purchased. And then if it turns out it doesn't have to be purchased, the event still goes on.
Fine, and even if we agreed to pay half of the $350, it'd be like making a $175 donation from the association, which would be far better than defending a $2 million lawsuit or something.
Yeah. I like that.
Well, I don't agree with us splitting that insurance, mainly because of the precedence that it sets that we're going to pick up the slack for those fundraisers. I do think they are important, but my concern with approving it as is and leaving it open-ended is that we really don't know what the insurance requirement is for them, and we don't know what the cost really is for them. And I don't think that really helps community council or Fort Clark Days at all if we can't give them the actual information for them to be able to decide whether it's something that's cost effective for them or not. So
it's going to be up to them to make that decision when they get that information. Right. And whether they want to do that or not do that, but we're not voting on that and we're not suggesting. That's up to them. If they want to call it off and not have no alcohol at all and still have the dance, that's their decisions to come to. They're just asking us to give them permission to go ahead and plan this thing with the conditions that we have set forth.
If I'm not mistaken, these two events, one is at Fort Clark Days, on Fort Clark Days. The other one is a fundraiser for monies to put on Fort Clark Days. And it's from where she left.
Well, and as far as the cost goes, we do know, I believe, that the worst case scenario would be the necessity for the $350 policy. So we can say there'll be a cost of $350 or less, depending on what options are offered back, including Debbie's suggestion of an umbrella policy with people paying in to use it.
But I'm sorry, but isn't the community council and Fort Clark co-sponsoring Fort Clark Days? And therefore, this is an event to get fundraiser for Fort Clark Days.
Question.
So therefore, we are co-event or co-sponsors with them.
What is the policy, Mr. Lawrence? As a new board member, I do not know exactly what the policy is with community council on Fort Clark Days.
Well, my understanding,
at this point in time.
Yeah, my understanding is that community council is the sponsor of the Fort Clark Days, and Fort Clark Springs Association supports the community council in doing that. But I don't know that we have ever been considered, well, not the last year anyway, considered to be a co-sponsor, just a supporter. And so they have to, I believe the community council does have an insurance policy that they get each year for Fort Clark Days. And this one dance might be covered under their policy of that event. I'd have to ask, or they would have to ask to be sure. And they do, Allison is usually in contact with Mr. Blesh about that. Am I speaking correctly? Do you not have an insurance policy for Fort Clark Days?
Well, we do, but that is cost of that policy is something that's always been paid by the fort. Now, this last year, it was just the policy for the actual weekend. The year before that, the policy covered all of the fundraising, dances, and all of that. So I think it covered 4 or 5 other events as well. So, yeah, I think it was more money. So there's a possibility of adding an addendum to that Fort Clark Days policy, but again, that has to be done through the fort. We don't engage those services. Right. So it's something that's possibly that could be added to that, or it could be otherwise. And we would have the funds. If you're talking $350, The treasury for community council has the funds. But then that would be turned over to the Fort Clark Days Committee for them to decide whether that is an expense that they would want to incur with having the fundraising event. Okay, does that sound, does that answer any of your questions?
It does answer some of the questions, but could we find out exactly what that policy that you're paying for last year entailed?
If you're paying for it, if the board's paying for the policy, there should be something that that policy actually covers. How many days, what events. I know, like I said earlier, we used to do it for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then, but it was more substantial because we had those extra events, the dances and stuff also covered.
You're asking about a policy the community council has.
No, he's paying
Actually,
it. The Fort pays it.
Actually, the Fort does.
Yeah.
You remind me that the Fort,
Right.
you always come to the board, ask them
Yep.
for the permission and also the
Right.
policy. I remember that.
And it was $1,500 for the policy 2 years ago. I have no idea what the cost of the policy was this year.
And I don't remember all of the coverages for that.
Yeah.
I
think that's
didn't
where we
even remember
need
we
to
did
start
it,
at.
much less
Yeah.
know the coverage, yeah.
Okay?
But you're right.
Yeah.
But that would take
That
care
was,
of
that was
dance.
one, that was one of, that, along with your other contributions to the motel and the RV
Right,
park,
that was
campground.
a part of it.
You know, those were all part of the contributions that
That's
Fort
right.
Clark Springs Association is supported in, for Fort Clark Days.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
So that policy might very well take care of that dance.
It might,
But-
but I know 2 years ago it was like $1,500 for the extra coverages. Okay, but I don't know what it was last
I know
year.
the first year that we included everything was something like $3,500 or something.
No, it was only 1,500.
This
No,
is,
when we were gonna do all the extra events,
Right.
the dances and everything for the whole event.
I thought it was only 1,500.
I could've thought it was.
Okay, but again, it was paid by the board, so I don't know. Somebody would have, on the board would have to go
what
back.
we're
and look
talking
those.
about here right now involves the March 1st
Yeah.
event, correct?
Yeah.
Huh?
They were asking for.
No, this, I think it
No.
covers, it says the Friday,
The one coming up for Thanksgiving, November 23rd, is something that really needs to be dealt with today. What you're asking for is very good, but I don't think we could get all that information and deal with it today. And it affects the March 1st event, so we could gather that information and deal with it at the November meeting.
And we need to figure out one for Friday, the 23rd,
Yeah.
and
That's it,
that's it.
yeah.
And,
So,
and you need to know, let me reiterate that $300 to $350, that's just an estimate that he gave me. It may be more, maybe less, I don't know.
oh, really? I thought
That's
it
just
was-
an estimate, 3 to
Ah.
350.
Oh, 3 to 350.
Yes, sir.
Well, does someone want to
Call for a vote.
amend the, how's our motion stand right now?
Well, the motion stands with the
Can you read it back?
additional insurance policy being agreed on.
the
You want to read that?
motion to approve community council's use of RV park and Old Guardhouse Museum outdoor premises for fundraising dances to be held on the dates of November 23rd and March 1st, provided that Fort Clark Springs is named as an also insured on the event insurance policy as may be recommended by Fort Clark Springs Association Risk Manager.
I think that's good, and actually, that would let them know where they stand, what they could do now, and they could come back to the board and ask for a donation to cover
Sure.
part of that insurance cost.
Really good. I still call for a vote.
All right, all in favor of that motion as just stated by Bill, which includes indemnifying and covering Fort Clark Springs from liability for the event? That passes unanimously.
Could we also make sure that our notes reflect that comment, please? When you do our notes, our next notes, that it does include those comments, what we're requesting. So there's no question later on what was actually discussed.
Okay. maybe to get it exactly correct, you could check in with Christina. Make sure she gets it, please. Thank you. All right, Bill.
Number 2 on the action items is a schedule special meeting to review, modify, and consolidate recommendations of renter rules and regulation and RV park ad hoc committees.
Any suggestions for a date, time?
Do we have anybody here from them committees?
Well, it's our committee meeting. They've already turned in their paperwork to us
Yeah,
to
those
review.
were
And
ad
it's-
hoc committees that automatically exploded, dissolved.
And let me mention to you that this submission here was submitted by staff. The attempt was made to follow the documents and show what changes were made.
Okay.
I don't know how accurate that is, but it was the best effort they could produce at the time. So
Well,
just for assistance.
It's gonna be a piece of work, because we're gonna have to sit down and hash out the work of 3 committees and try to combine them into one document, I believe. So, we're gonna have more than one meeting, I'm sure. Not that I want more than one, but I don't see how else it'll get done.
I'm out of town a lot for the rest of the month, so I can't do anything the rest of the month. I don't have to be there, but.
November though, what if we go into November?
In November, I could either do the 13th or the 19th of November. That's my availability. I don't know what everybody else has. And the morning is better for me.
What's the 13th or the 19th?
13th is a
13th is
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 19th is Monday, the following week.
There's a calendar.
13th is Tuesday. Well, you have.
That's the week.
Yeah, that's it.
Larkin here on Tuesday morning.
Architectural, I'd say the 19th, Monday is better for me.
Is that, we also need to be able to read these and come prepared.
Don't know, we really do.
You've got them in your packet.
I know, but
Okay.
well, I read it and it's a lot, especially with the
Where's that
additional thing in
That's only
there.
the week of Thanksgiving though, that's,
Well, we've already got a board meeting the day before Thanksgiving.
we
so-
really do, don't we?
Yeah,
I just
it's
seen
not a
that.
big deal. Yeah.
So how about the Monday, the 19th?
Yeah.
Does that work for you, John?
Yeah, well, anything,
19th,
sure.
time?
9:30?
9:30 here.
Okay.
Okay, the motion is to schedule a special meeting on November 19th, 2018 at 9:30 to review, modify, and consolidate the recommendations of ad hoc committees and staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Done unanimously. Number 3, Bill.
Let me write down the date so I don't forget, please.
We've got it.
Okay. Yeah, but I gotta
But you-
put it on my calendar. I do it the old-fashioned way. I have a calendar on the wall I use. Okay, number 3, consider authorization of Preservation Committee to advertise for bids to repair Seminole Hall windows.
Can I ask a question on that first?
Sure.
On the windows, are you planning on doing all of the windows or just a certain amount of those windows?
No, the thing.
12.
Right.
12 of them.
Okay.
12.
That's if we can afford 12. We'll do what we can afford depending on the bids.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we authorize the Preservation Committee to advertise and obtain bids to repair windows on Seminole Hall.
Second.
that.
Discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Y'all need to go directed to the window people, not just newspaper.
Yes, sir.
Okay, number 4, Action item, accept the resignation of Mr. David Lee Murray from the Equine Committee and appoint Mrs. Sandy Herman, who's she? And Mrs. Marsha Moore to the committee.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the resignation from the Equine Committee of David Lee Murray and appoint Mrs. Sandy Herman and Mrs. Marsha Moore to that committee.
Second that.
Discussion.
Yes,
I also have some questions.
go ahead then.
So my first question is, why do we have both an equine committee and a horse club if they are doing the same thing for the stables? I don't know who can answer that.
My answer is,
Why not?
well, that's a good question, but the horse club is a separate entity that is not part
Exactly.
of the fort,
Exactly.
is not necessarily responsible to the fort except by any signed contract or engagement they have with the fort. The Equine Committee is a committee to represent the fort to and with the horse club.
Sure.
To represent and make sure that the fort's FCSA conditions and rules of usage are being applied and are being conformed with. That's the basic difference.
Okay, so the horse club is the recreational side of it, and the equine committee is the administration side of it. Is that
Yes.
a Cliff's Notes version of that? Okay.
That's right.
So then my second question is, why didn't we at the last meeting, when we had a equine report, why didn't we get notified that there were vacancies that were going to need to be filled? I understand one person is resigning, but you're removing one and adding two. It tells me there was a vacancy. So why didn't we have the opportunity to make a public
Why?
call for volunteers?
Nobody can answer a question why. Because nobody knows why. It just happened. So what kind of question is that? Why?
Well, sir, I think it's a valid question. If there was already a vacancy and they needed to fill the committee,
Why didn't you bring it up then?
well, I wasn't aware that there were vacancies.
Because why? Because nobody knew nothing about it until then. So some of these questions don't make any.
I can tell you what happened. The letter of resignation was submitted on October the 3rd. That was after the last meeting.
Exactly.
And then two names were presented to me, and I forwarded them to the board. That's the long and the short of it.
You know, so, I mean, but some of these questions are just off the wall. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't
We have
think
to
they
give
are.
a little thought of what we're asking.
I think it's a matter of people that are familiar with the horse club and the stables and the usage of it would be the ones that were also familiar and aware of the fact that there was needed additional members for the committee. And there was those people involved with that operation that submitted these folks' names.
But the horse club wasn't even aware that they were looking for people. The horse club theirself was not aware they were looking for names to fill the positions.
Well, in addition to that, we just had someone from the equine committee come up and say that they had no idea who was being put in. So I think even in the committee itself, they didn't know that there was people being submitted for the spots.
Okay, that's a good question.
Well, thank you.
Okay, that's a good question.
But the point,
Some of them questions is completely,
but the other point is that this was a equine committee decision that had nothing to do with the horse club. The horse club, as you stated or was stated, is different than the equine committee. So the equine committee proposed this situation. It has nothing to do with the horse club. Does it?
What's the real problem here?
Well,
Now, what are we getting at? Are you unhappy with the names submitted to be appointed, or?
well, I don't particularly know both of those individuals. Well, I know one of them, sorry.
Okay, well, why don't you just come right out and tell us who you object to and why?
I object to both of them, and here's why. Because we just had, and before we had the member input on the action items, we just had a member from the equine committee stand up here and tell us that the equine committee as a whole did not know that there were people being submitted for these vacancies. In every other committee that we've appointed people to, the committees have weighed in on who is being appointed on behalf of that committee. So now I do have an issue with the fact that one member from that committee, I do have a lot of issues, sir, and you know, and everybody else can know that too. But my issue is that we don't have the committee's actual consent. If we've got a committee member up here saying that they didn't know that there was a recommendation coming in.
Okay, I want to talk.
Yes, sir.
So, who dropped the ball on putting out advertising for names for this committee, for these committees? So, I mean, in other words, the equine committee says that they don't know nothing about it.
No, the horse committee.
The horse committee says they didn't know any,
Nothing about it.
nothing about it. But the
equine committee
did know something about it.
No, because there's two members from the equine committee that did not know names were being submitted at this board meeting.
So that's where my problem is. That's where my problem is. If we've got people from that same committee not knowing that there are people being nominated for vacancies, it goes back to the communication.
Can I make a suggestion, please?
Yeah.
These names were submitted, and I forward those on to the board. The board
By
can
who?
certainly, well, I've already said, the board, the names were submitted by Judy Winchell and Linda O'Brien. Now, they were submitted to me, I passed them on to the board.
I understand.
Now, I think the board has taken an attitude in the past that when we have volunteers step up, we welcome them.
I understand.
And so the board could very easily appoint them to this committee, and then the board can next month consider other names. That'd be fine too. The board can put as many people on that committee as they need to put. If other volunteers come forward, then perhaps that's the way to handle it.
And
How many people are on this committee?
I thought it was 5 people.
So you've got 3 people that does not have a vested interest in the barn whatsoever or what happens down there, and only 2 members from the horse club on that committee then, is what this would amount to. And then people were voting on stuff before that cost members down there extra money for something that the state doesn't even require, but now they require it themselves. That's really hard.
The fort required that.
Okay, I think that maybe we're getting into issues that
Other
maybe we
than
don't
what
need to
we're
do that right
dealing
now.
with.
I'm just suggesting that you have 2 people who've stepped up that said they want to serve, and that could be handled today, and then additional people could be considered later. I don't see.
yeah, if anybody wants to volunteer from the horse club or the committee, they can come next month and put their name on the list, and we can vote them in too.
I believe the vote was
No
been
wrong.
called for, and so I think we need to vote for it, yes or no, up or down.
I think it needs to be postponed.
Huh?
I think it needs to be postponed. Right now, we don't even have an active contract with the horse club.
Well, that, and then there's 2 members of the committee back there that are shaking their heads no, that they had no idea that the equine committee was putting forth
I
these
understand,
names.
but they can volunteer.
Well, they're already on the committee, sir, and so they didn't know.
Well, ma'am, I'm saying that they can volunteer next month and we can appoint them too.
They're already on the committee, sir.
Okay,
They're sitting members
but
of
if
the
they
committee.
want somebody else on there, they can volunteer
They were
them.
looking for people, John.
Okay.
They did not even know we were looking for people. We were.
But we are looking for, always looking for people to volunteer for these committees. And we got 2 people willing to volunteer.
But do they know anything about horses?
Do you know a horse has 4 legs?
That's not even funny.
Have you ever owned a horse?
Do the vote. I say we postpone it.
All right, all those in favor of the motion as put forth to accept the resignation of David Lee Murray and appoint Mrs. Sandy Herman and Mrs. Marcia Moore to the Equine Committee. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 3-2.
And we'll be,
That's fine.
we will be, anybody that wants to volunteer next month, anybody y'all want to appoint, have them come up here and put their name on the volunteer list.
Well, it's full. You've got your 5
It ain't full.
What?
We have an alternate. We have an alternate.
Yeah, you,
Now, who's the alternate? Who's gonna be the alternate?
Well,
Who makes that
that's what we're
decision?
talking about. If somebody
Who
can
makes the
volunteer.
decision who's an alternate?
Well, we can make the decision as a group when we're all together.
Yes, I'd suggest the Equine Committee as a group decide who they want for an alternate and submit it to the board to approve it.
And y'all might accidentally talk to the other committee, the club, and see if they have somebody that they want to recommend.
All right, we're going to move on to the next action item, Mr.
This
Vice
kind of stuff
President.
from happening.
Next item on the agenda is to levy common property assessments. The tax bill is due
I
to
believe
be paid.
the recommendation from staff is that that assessment would be in the amount of $30. Is that correct?
$31 for each
30.
lot owner, membership, charter member, and
$31.
family recreational member.
Can we have a motion?
Motion to levy the 2018 tax year common property assessment of $31 for each lot owner, membership, charter membership, and family recreational membership.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Where's that money that the fort's gonna pay coming from?
Comes,
According to your declaration, the only thing you can pay is the mud portion of that out of the impound fund.
That's-
or the restricted fund.
that's all we do. Let me clarify some things that seem to have been misunderstood on social media a little bit. The declaration under common property assessments states that the taxes that they're talking about there, which are the mud taxes, the utility taxes to mud, must be paid out of the restricted fund or any other funds available if there are not enough in the restricted funds. And if there still is not enough, then an assessment can be levied. That's not the case. Those mud taxes are about a little under $25,000. They're paying off bonds from some years ago that were floated to do our roads and streets and whatever else, I'm not sure, different things. And so this year, and every other year as far back as I'm aware of, those mud taxes out of the tax bill have been paid out of the restricted fund. There's not been an assessment levied on any member for them, nor is there one proposed here. As you know, your tax bill is comprised of taxes from a number of different taxing authorities, such as the school district, the county, MUD, etc. So the MUD taxes are taken out of our tax bill and paid from the restricted fund. The balance of the taxes due there are assessed by the county on all of our property. We take the amount of those taxes that's attributable to buildings that are not common property and pay those out of our general fund and budget. There's a line item in there. I'm not sure if I know the amount, 110,000 maybe.
The line item is 114,000 was budgeted.
114.
114,000.
Yeah, and he came to 110. The balance, which is on the common property, is comprises what the assessment that we're doing here. It's still a common property assessment. If you go to the declaration and look in the section under assessment, you can go back to the portion that says common property assessment, and you'll find in there what I said, that the restricted fund has to pay the MUD taxes. If you go back to the beginning, you'll see where the board is authorized to levy assessment to pay taxes on common property and other items. That's where our authorization and authority to levy this assessment comes from. That's it.
This is less than last year, right? It was 38 last year.
30 last year.
30.
Oh, it was 30 last year.
All right, we have a motion and a second to levy that assessment. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in
Any
favor?
more questions on that?
Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Under,
New business,
yes.
discussion of regular meeting format.
Yeah, I believe that's an item brought forth by Maria. So Maria, you want to present it?
Yes, thank you. At the town hall meeting, one of the things that was echoing through member concerns was the fact that the way we currently have things ordered here on the agenda is that we're asking people to provide comments on action items before the action items are even given a brief synopsis of. So what I'd like to ask is that the board consider restructuring the agenda to allow for action items to be discussed, to include member comments. And I have two options after going through some research and also chatting with some other board members in different associations. And the two things that I would like to recommend, one of the two, is that either we move member comments pertaining to action items to be part of the action items and allow for a 3 to 5 minute segment that I'd be happy to put a timer on, to allow comments that can only be pertinent to those items after the item has been described, or we add to the agenda and make it longer by providing a detailed description of what the action items are going to be. I personally think that just moving the comments into each action item and giving a 3 to 5 minute opportunity for someone to say something about the action item is probably a little more in line with how we can better serve our members. But I wanted to offer both of those suggestions.
Well, I agree that our members need to be able to voice their opinions and comments at that time. I think that the problem was in previous years that it got out of hand. So I think we definitely need to put a time limit on it and be able to control it. I mean, in other words, but certainly have a time limit on how long they can get up and talk, because it definitely got out of hand in some of the meetings prior to this year.
Yes, sir, I agree. But I also would like to add that we just saw an issue where a member came up to give their comments on an action item, and by the time we got to the action item, we didn't remember and didn't understand that that individual was in fact part of the committee that was having an issue. So I think also we don't always have people up here talking about every single action item, so it may not even affect the length of the meeting per se, but it will definitely give people an opportunity to give more informed feedback about what we're trying to do.
I would speak to that. That all sounds very nice and very good, but what you're doing is you are transforming a director's meeting into a membership meeting. So now the question becomes, do you want to have a membership meeting every month? And then another question comes up. The declaration requires us to have a director's meeting once a month. A director's meeting does not include participation from the members. That's a shareholders meeting or a membership meeting or a town hall meeting. And then one of the reasons I called for the town hall meeting we just had was to allow the members to come forth and talk about whatever they want, to bring up whatever they want. And it isn't just a matter of the length of time to the agenda, it's a matter of proper procedure. And if you go to Rio Grande Electric Board of Directors meeting, which by the way is held on a weekday, and see if you're allowed to get up and participate in the discussion on the action items. Go to General Motors Board of Directors meetings and see if you can come in and participate. It doesn't happen. It has happened here because the past practice was not a proper procedure being carried out in the conduct of the directors meeting. This is supposed to be a directors meeting to conduct the business and affairs of the association. We want to be sensitive to and aware of the members' concerns and feelings, but it can't be opened up to discussion and debate between all the members in the board. It just doesn't work.
Well, I heard everything you said, and I would say to you that it is at the discretion of the board to allow members to provide input, and we are already allowing members to provide input. We're just not giving the members the appropriate amount of information to be able to give their input without questioning what we're doing as we get to these action items. So asking somebody to say, what is your opinion on these action items, or do you have questions for us about these action items, but not telling them what these action items fully encompass, I think that's a disservice to the membership. I'll give you another example. Just with this community council line item number 1. When community council was giving their report, they had no idea that we were having to consider the alcohol or additional people having to work. They had no idea about that until we started talking about it in the action item, and then you saw people trying to provide input. I don't think that we are following Robert's Rules of Order to a T. I also do not think that it is bad for us to allow for members to have their input in a different part of the meeting as opposed to where it currently is. And I do not believe that it will restructure the meeting to create a different function of the meeting. It will still be a board of director meeting. It'll just be structured a little differently. And again, I did offer to put a timer on it. During the town hall meeting, people were very respectful of the time constraints. One person was cut off at her time limit, and she didn't argue with the moderator. I believe people are professional, and if they're given an opportunity to exercise that professionalism, I think we can work something out with them. And if people decide to be hostile and ugly about it, then we can fix that and we can end that opportunity. But just like you asked us to give this a chance here and readdress it later, I'm asking for us to readdress it and move it and give it a chance to see if that better serves our membership.
Well, you also said something about maybe putting a little more information in here so they would know more what was going on. Maybe not allow them to have 3 minutes during the discussion each time, but give them more information to where they would know more of what they wanted to ask on something. Your agenda may be a little longer, but that may be a better option than allowing them to get up and talk after each item.
Well, that was one of my 2 options.
Yeah, so. I know, that's what I would think that would be a better option at this point in time.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I do provide a synopsis to the board of all the agenda items. I could do the same thing ahead of time, and we could publish that. And then everyone would know what is being considered and what the little bit of a background is. And then there wouldn't necessarily be a need to change the positioning of the
No.
member comments.
My suggestion would be maybe the board get it a day or two before the membership got it, so we could put some more ideals and point blank things in it before
in our
that
board
membership
packets.
actually got it.
It's in our board packets, though.
Well, I know, but this has to go, we would need to do what we wanted to discuss a little more pertinent before the membership got it. So they would need it, we would need to know it before the board packet, because they would need it before the meeting.
We can work out the logistics. That means then that the agenda has to be put together sooner than it is being put together now to give the time for the publication, et cetera. Those logistics can be worked out.
But I think that would be a better option.
That may be the answer.
That'd be a good option, and actually, you wouldn't need to get the entire agenda early, just the action item parts and the.
Yes.
Right.
All right then.
Would someone care to make a motion here so we can move on?
I would like to make a motion that we provide a detailed description of the action items that are set to be on the board agenda for the meeting to membership so that they can continue to be able to put comments pertaining to action items prior to voting on them.
Second that.
May I comment? I appreciate the motion made, but it was made to get a detailed explanation. I think what we have to do is provide a summary of what is taking place.
That's what we get already.
That's not, okay.
I'll amend detailed to a summary,
Thank you, that would help.
similar to what we received.
Second that.
Any discussion? All those,
Read it back,
Yes, I can.
well, or Christina, or whoever.
Oh, I have my
Okay,
notes.
all right.
I made a motion to provide a summary description of the action items on the agenda to allow members to continue giving their comments prior to our action items on the agenda.
Yes. Thank you.
all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. The next time is a bill.
Next discussion of the facility use agreement for the Fort Clark Springs Association stables. Let's back up one. Can we do the open gate for Halloween night between 6 and 8? Is that what we said?
I think what we're simply doing here is confirming part of a policy that has been previously adopted by the board. Would that be correct? John, you were part of that. Does that sound right?
That's right.
Okay. Are we in agreement to confirm that open gate for Halloween night from what times did you say, Bill?
6 to 8?
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Everybody in agreement?
Are we voting on this, or?
We're just reaffirming that it's open, because we're allowing it to be
Yeah,
done.
this is not a motion or a vote. It just simply, do we agree that's part of a policy that we adopted previously? I think back in June or July sometime. All right,
Everybody's in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
all right. Next bill.
Okay, back to the discussion of the facility use agreement for Fort Clark Springs Association stable.
I didn't see that in our board packet.
I don't know who's.
It wasn't in our packet. We have no information on it.
No, it's very simply, the question is, does the board want us to enter into negotiations with the horse club for a contract? In the alternative, it may be that the fort would have no contract except individual horse owner, the rentable venues, as a rentable venue.
What does the horse club want?
The Horse Club has submitted a contract, and it needs to be reviewed and then negotiated. I'm just saying that there may be an option there that the board would want to consider. And so, in my opinion, we can begin contract negotiations. At the same time, we can develop an alternative to that contract.
I make a motion that we allow Mr. Lawrence to research and decide on a contract or add to or take away from that contract.
To negotiate a contract to submit to the board for
Yes.
approval?
Yes.
And as well, I'm asking as well an alternative to a contract.
And to explore alternative options?
Yes.
I'll second that motion if that's your motion,
That's my
John.
motion.
I second it.
So for discussion purposes, if I understand this correctly, you're going to present to us, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You're going to present to us two different options for us to review both of them. Correct? That's what I understand? Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? I didn't see all the hands, but I saw at least 3 in favor. Did you vote in favor?
I voted in favor. I'd like to see the options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all we're voting for, just to see what the options are.
Yep.
Well, and what the contract with the horse club can
Looks
be
like.
negotiated to, not entered into, but negotiated to.
Sure.
I'm
No.
abstaining because I have a horse down there. I'm just abstaining from the comments. 'cause I
That,
do have
you
horses.
recused yourself.
I recused myself.
Very
yes.
good. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, please note, Deborah Isaacs recused herself from the vote. All right. That passes. I think that's it. So at this point, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor of adjourning to an executive session now, please indicate with the raising of your hand. All in favor, thank you. Now, because the executive session may get a little lengthy, I would ask the other directors to make themselves available now for any members that want to come up and have a discussion, mention, and talk to us. Thank you all for being here and sitting through this.
Yes, sir.
Smiling face right there.
Yes, sir.
We are reconvening to our open session at 12:50 p.m. on September 17th, 2008, October 17th, 2018. I'm only a month behind. Okay, in our executive session, we put together a counter proposal to an offer that was submitted to purchase one of the properties that we own that has come back to us in Unit 15. So that counter proposal is going to be sent back. We had a discussion involving an employee and a complaint made, a number of complaints, 8 I believe, in the form of letters made against that employee, and we're going to resolve that with a joint statement from the board of directors that has yet to be construed and put together, and will be issued out to the membership. The other item that we had to deal with was a variance needed for property in Unit 38 to allow a fence encroachment of a couple of feet onto the boulevard that's basically unused, and to allow the fence to be painted, to have a permit issued for painting it. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion that we grant that variance.
I second it.
Okay, motion to grant the variance. Second, can we add to that as a friendly amendment and also approve the permit to paint the fence?
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's accepted as a friendly amendment. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Will that individual be putting in the variance request formally?
I can't understand you.
Will the member be putting in the variance request formally to the architecture committee so we have the paper trail and are not stuck in this position again?
We can request that. Would you like that added to the motion? That the member be requested to submit a request for the variance?
Yeah, I think it should be.
Yes.
So it should be.
Okay, I'm asking you.
No, yes.
All right. Will that be accepted?
I will amend the motion to include that the member actually do a variance request and present it to the architectural department.
Yeah, well, they can forward it to the board, but actually it'll end up in the file, I'm sure.
Well, let's require it goes to the board or to Mr. Lawrence then. That way it'll get written.
The request for the variance is for the painting or for the?
For the encroachment of the property.
That's kind of property, it goes to the board.
Yes, so it'll come to the
So you want
board.
them to send it to the board meeting?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
They have to request a variance from
They
the
can
board.
bring it to me and I'll give it to the board.
That's what
All right, all in favor of that motion? Passes unanimously. Is there anything else I've missed from the executive session?
No.
Mr., I'm sorry to interject. I spoke to that couple you're talking about yesterday. So based on what I don't know if I'm gonna call them back or not, but the issue being, are we gonna tell them that the variance is cleared?
Yeah.
Or they gotta submit something
Yes.
to get it cleared?
Yeah, no, it's already cleared.
They just need to submit a formal
It's
request.
approved, but they are required to fill out a request for the variance.
Just do the paperwork.
Okay.
Just do the paperwork.
Okay. All right, with that, although it's not needed, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn
Make a motion.
this meeting at 12:55 PM.
John made the motion, I second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Passes. The next board meeting will be November 21st, 2018, 9:30 a.m. in the boardroom.
Day before Thanksgiving.
The day before Thanksgiving.
The day before Thanksgiving.
Do we really want to do that?
Yeah, we'll have to give thanks, okay?
I know we
Oh, yeah.
will, but do we really want to do that?
I hope my turkey don't burn.
Yeah.
I don't know when else you could do it though.
No, I think we can do it if we have a good turnout, or if somebody has to miss, they have to miss. Maybe we'll have a brief meeting.
Just depends on the agenda. We can have a, in and out meetings, really. Depends on what goes on the agenda.
That's true. Are you going to be out of town, John?
Excuse me?
Are you going to be out of town?
I have not a clue.
Yeah.
I have not a clue.
The boss hasn't informed you.
Well, sometimes we go out of town, and and
I'd like to make a
sometimes the family
recommendation.
comes out here, sometimes it depends on.
I'd like to make a recommendation. Are we able to tell all the committees to provide a paper report for us to review when we get our board packets, to expedite the meeting for next month, so that all we're dealing with are action items, and if we have specific questions for committees, we can address those if needed. Can we do that?
What I send you guys, anything that I'm a board liaison on, that's the reason I send that information to you. I did not get the historic preservation in time because I was out of town yesterday.
No, I understand that, but instead of having everybody come up to give a physical report,
Read it
can we
beforehand and ask
request?
questions if you got questions? Because
Right.
the only thing is, the actual audience don't get to hear what they've got to say. On
But we
the
can
board.
publish those, and that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just asking as a way to,
That's the reason.
because
I
we're
like
going to run
do it,
into
so
this
y'all
problem
know
by
what
Christmas
minutes
as
were.
well.
So,
You realize this is just a personal
I understand, because
conversation.
we've
yeah,
done,
we are.
we've
We're already
The camera's
adjourned.
still on.
already adjourned, but
Yeah.
I'm just asking, you know,
Would
I
you,
know lots of people have lots of guests and lots of social activities they need to do on the day
Well, we
before
need-
Thanksgiving.
I cook all day.
we're required to have a board meeting,
I got a lot of cooking
Each
to
month.
do.
so.
Well, that's why I'm asking, can we just tell committees, we know who they all are, can we just ask them to present their written report in time to be put in our board packets, and then we've got them for the minutes. And if we have questions specifically to something that they write, then we can ask them at the board meeting at that point.
I've suggested that for years. That's the reason I do it as a board liaison to the board.
But
So
anyhow,
is that a yes or no?
I haven't got a clue where I'm gonna be for Thanksgiving, but
Probably
I know where I'd like to be.
Me too. On a beach, there's warm.
I actually wanna go the different direction.
What?
Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Oh, gosh, you'll get snowed in up there.